On a nice green sod by the river's side where the little fellow was dancing in a ring, so gaily as may be, with their red caps wagging about at every bound in the moonshine, and so light were these bounds that the lobes of dew, although they trembled under their feet, were not disturbed by the capering. Thus did marry on their gambols, spinning round and round, and twirling and bobbing, and diving and going through all manner of figures, until one of them chirped out, "Cease, cease with your drumming. Here's an end to our mumming. By my smell, I can tell a priest this way is coming." And away every one of the fairies scampered off as hard as they could, concealing themselves under the leaves of Flushmore, where if their little red caps should even peep out, they would only look like the crimson bells, and more hid themselves at the shady side of the stones and brambles, and others under the bank of the river, and in holes and crannies of one kind or another. This fairy speaker was not mistaken, for along the road, which was within view of the river, came Father Horrigan on his pony, thinking to himself as it was so late as he would make an end of his journey at the first cabin he came to. And according to his determination, he stopped at the dwelling of Dermond Leary, lifted the latch, and entered with "My blessing on all here." I need not say that Father Horrigan was welcome guest wherever he went, for no man was more pious or better beloved in the country. Now it was a great trouble to Dermond that he had nothing to offer his reverence for supper, or as a relish for the potatoes which the old woman, for so Dermond called his wife, though she was not much past 20, had down boiling in the pot over the fire. He thought of the net which he had set in the river, but as it had been only there a short time, the chances were against his finding a fish in it. No matter, thought Dermond. There could be no harm in stepping down to try, and maybe I want the fish for the priest's supper. That one will be there before me. Down to the riverside went Dermond, and he found in his net a fine salmon as ever jumped to the brightest waters of the spreading Lee. But as he was going to take it out, the net was pulled from him. He could not tell how or by whom. Away got the salmon, and went swimming across along the currents as gaily as if nothing had happened. Dermond looked sorrowfully at the wake which the fish left upon the water, shining like a line of silver in the moonlight. And then, with an angry motion of his right hand and a stamp of his foot, gave vent to his feelings by muttering, "May bitter bad luck attend you night and day for blackguard schemer of a salmon, wherever you go. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. If there's any shame in you to give me the slip after this fashion, and I'm not clear in my own mind, you'll come to no good, for some kind of evil thing or other helped you. Did I not feel it pull the net against me as strong as the devil himself?" "That's not true for you," said one of the little fairies, who had scampered off at the approach of the priest, coming up to Dermond Leary, with the whole throng of companions at his heels. "There was only 12 of us pulling against you." Dermond gazed on the tiny speaker with wonder, who continued, "Make yourself no way uneasy about the priest's supper, for if you will go back and ask him one question from us, there will be as fine a supper as ever was put the table spread before him in less than no time." "I'll have nothing at all to do with you," replied Dermond, in a tone of determination, and after a pause he added, "I'm much obliged to you for your offer, sir, but I know better than to sell myself to you or the like of you for supper. And more than that, I know Father Horrigan has more regard for my soul than to wish me to pledge it forever out regard to anything you could put before him. So there's an end to the matter." The little speaker, with a pertinacity not to be repulsed by Dermond's banner, continued, "Will you ask the priest one civil question for us?" Dermond considered for some time, and he was right in doing so, but he thought that no one could come to harm of asking a civil question. "I see no objection to do the same, gentlemen," said Dermond, "but I will have nothing in life to do with you or your supper, mind that." "Then," said the little speaking fairy, whilst the rest came crowding after him from all parts, "go and ask Father Horrigan to tell us whether our souls will be saved at the last day, like the souls of the good Christians. And if you wish us well, bring back word what he says without delay." Away went Dermond to his cabin, where he found potatoes thrown out on the table, and his good wife handing the biggest of them all, a beautiful laughing red apple, smoking like a hard-ridden horse on a frosty night, over to Father Horrigan. "Please, your reverence," said Dermond after some hesitation, "may I make bold to ask you your opinion?" "What may that be?" said Father Horrigan. "Why, then, begging your reverence's pardon for my freedom, it is, if the souls of the good people are to be saved on the last day." "Who bid you ask me that question, Leary?" said the priest, fixing his eyes upon him very sternly, which Dermond could not stand before at all. "I'll tell no lies about the matter, and nothing in life but the truth," said Dermond. "It was the good people themselves who sent me to ask you the question, and they are in thousands down by the bank of the river, waiting for me to get back with the answer." "Go back by all means," said the priest, "and tell them, if they want to know, to come here to me themselves, and I'll answer that with any other questions they are pleased to ask with the greatest pleasure of my life." Dermond accordingly returned to the fairies, who came swarming about him to hear what the priest had to say in reply, and Dermond spoke out among them like the bold man he was. But when they heard they must go to the priest, away they fled, some here, more there, and some this way and more that, whisking by poor Dermond so fast and in such numbers that he was quite bewildered. When he came to himself, which was not for a long time, he went back to his cabin and ate his dry potatoes along with Father Horrigan, and made quite light of the thing. But Dermond could not help thinking it a mighty hard case that his reverence, whose words had the power to banish the fairies at such a rate, should have no sort of relish to his supper, and that fine salmon he had met should have gotten away from him in such a manner.